Good morning, Wham! What's happening? Alright, so we are back at it with Pocahontas, and we're doing Chapter 7, A Lord, a Hurricane, and a Wedding. Alright, Connor, what do you think?
Cool, yeah.
Yeah? Alright, we'll find out.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, well, here you go, help us read, say hi to everybody.
Hello, Wareham.
Alright.
Hi. Okay.
People who walked off the two English ships in May of 1610 were horrified by what they saw. Jamestown was a wreck. Fear of the Indians had kept everyone inside the fort through the cold winter. The settlers had been forced to burn the buildings to keep warm. By spring, there were hardly any buildings left. The few survivors looked like skeletons. "We are starving," they gasped. Those on the ships had been through an ordeal themselves. On the way to Jamestown, yellow fever broke out. There was no treatment for the disease then, so people died, and their bodies had to be thrown overboard. They were barely over the epidemic when they ran into a fierce Atlantic hurricane. Do you know what a hurricane at sea is like? Here it is. Phenomenal roaring winds, towering crashing waves, fierce crackling lightning, ear-splitting thunder. One ship, the Catch, went down. All hands lost. That means they all died. The Sea Venture with sturdy Christopher Newport as captain was wrecked on coral rocks. Luckily, the rocks were within wading distance of the island of Bermuda. If you have to be shipwrecked, Bermuda is not a bad place to be. The voyagers set down to work and built two new ships, the Patience and the Deliverance. They were eager to get to Jamestown and start a new life there. They imagined that the colony was thriving. Yeah, I've been to Bermuda. Probably should have stayed in Bermuda. Bermuda's awesome. You know what they found at Jamestown? Are you surprised they decided to leave? They had enough of this new world. On June 7, 1610, everyone marched out of the wretched settlement, climbed aboard ship and said, "Goodbye, Jamestown," and headed for England. Hey, they didn't get far. Lord Delaware. What state's name for him, Connor? What do you think?
Delaware?
You got it. Was on his way up the James River with a big flotilla and 300 settlers. He was the new governor and a good one. He made them turn around and start Jamestown again. Lord Delaware called Jamestown a very unwholesome place. Still, he stayed. The colonists set to work. They cleaned, fixed, and built. The Indians continued to make their lives miserable, but now the settlers fought back. Then a few Indians and a few colonists began to trade. Some Englishmen began going up the rivers to trade with distant tribes. Tom Savage, who had lived as an adopted son of the Powhatan, was able to interpret for both peoples. More ships came, artisans and laborers arrived, together with gentlemen of quality and more livestock. And still many died, not from starvation, but from the diseases that abounded in the deep atmosphere at Jamestown. Lord Delaware was one of these who got sick. He went back to England, and Sir Thomas Dale took command. Dale understood the need for a healthier settlement, so one was built at a great bend of the James River near the falls that John Smith had mistaken for the Pacific Ocean. The new settlement was named Henrico, for Henry, the king's oldest son. It had 2 fair rows of houses, 3 storehouses, a hospital, and a fair and handsome church. All of it was constructed in 4 months. Thomas Dale saw to that. Dale was a stern man, strict and religious. Anyone who swore, broke a rule, or didn't work got whipped. Just like our class.
Mm-hmm.
3 offenses, you were executed. Unfortunately, You can see why everyone worked. Enrico soon had a visitor. Unfortunately, she was dragged there. Her name was Pocahontas. The Indian princess was visiting some Potomac Indians when an Englishman on a trading expedition lured her onto a ship and wouldn't let her off. He took Pocahontas as hostage to Enrico, held her there, taught her the Christian religion, and gave her a new name, Rebecca. Now it happened that a young Englishman named John Rolfe had a plantation nearby. He fell in love with the beautiful Indian princess, and she fell in love with him. Rolfe wrote to Governor Dale asking to marry Pocahontas, to whom my heart and best thoughts are, and have a long time been so entangled and enthralled in so intricate a labyrinth, that I was ever weary to unwind myself thereout. So now the thing with Pocahontas, so it depends how you want to look at this. She was kidnapped, forced to get into religion. But the marriage, by all accounts, seemed pretty happy. I mean, she was treated well. She seemed to like it. So that part seems probably okay. I mean, we're not there. We don't know. But it began obviously not well. But John Rolfe really did seem to love her and vice versa. But who knows? It was a fine wedding, and it took place in the church at Jamestown. The Powhatan wouldn't come. Perhaps he feared a trap, or perhaps he was sad to see his daughter leave the Indian world. He sent 2 of her brothers and her uncle, Chief Apachicahano. They came wearing handsome garments of leather, furs, feathers, and beads. Pocahontas' marriage helped bring peace between Indians and colonists. Soon Pocahontas had a baby, and John Rolfe was so proud he took his family to England. So a couple of things here. Now, when Pocahontas goes to England, she was treated really well. Like, everyone came to see her. She was almost kind of a star. Like, oh, it's Pocahontas. Like, a big deal. And she, got to meet the Queen and hang out and have lots of parties. So she was treated very well. John Rolfe was more than just some random dude, by the way. John Rolfe is the guy a scientist, a botanist, who invented a type of tobacco and breeded it from the Spanish one to make a really good tobacco that could taste really good, I guess, in cigarettes. And it helped make cigarettes boom all over the world and made Jamestown a lot of money. So he's a little more important than just some random guy.
Then, yeah.
Yep.
John. Okay.
Soon Pocahontas had a baby, and John Rolfe was so proud he took his family to England. There Pocahontas charmed everyone, even King James. And King James didn't charm easily. He was a bit of a grouch. The English people called her Lady Rebecca and treated her as the princess she was. People fussed over her and pointed to her when she walked down the street. She was a celebrity. But she must have longed for a familiar face, someone she could talk to in her native language. And then she learned that John Smith was alive. She expected him to come and see her at once, but he didn't. She waited and waited. Finally, when he did come, she was so hurt that at first she wouldn't even talk to him. John Smith had been honored by her father. He was a member of her family. How could he ignore her? But Smith seemed different and awkward. Perhaps he didn't know how to be her brother now that she wore a long dress like a proper English woman. Perhaps Pocahontas herself didn't know in which world she belonged. When John Rolfe decided to go back to Virginia, she didn't want to go. So that's interesting. She wanted to stay in England. She didn't feel at all well when they boarded a ship and sailed down the Thames River. Yes, that's how you pronounce it. Before they reached the open sea, she was so sick that her husband took her off the ship. It was smallpox. Pocahontas died and was buried in the church at Gravesend, a town that is now part of London. but in those days was in the country. She was 22. Very young. Let's take ourselves back in time to Jamestown. The Powhatan has not yet learned that his beloved daughter is dead. When he does, the peace will be finished. They probably thought that they killed Pocahontas, which is ridiculous. That didn't happen. The Indians will attack. They will kill settlers, burn their homes, and try to drive them from the land. But now, for a while, there is calm. Okay. So an awesome 3-day lesson of Jamestown. We'll do about 2 more days of lessons on Jamestown to kind of refresh and get it down. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Have a great long weekend. Bye. Say good night, Connor.
Good night, Connor.